Captain Alex Carter was no stranger to danger. As a soldier, he had faced countless missions, many of which seemed impossible. But nothing could have prepared him for what had happened on this alien planet. The mission had started like any other. Alex and his team were sent to this distant world to gather intelligence on an unknown species. They had landed in a remote part of the planet, far from the large cities, where a small alien outpost had been detected. Their task was simple: observe and report back. But everything changed when they were ambushed by hostile forces. Alex's team had tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. The alien species, with their advanced weapons and quick reflexes, overpowered them.
Alex was one of the few who survived the attack.
The others, his friends, his comrades, were lost in the chaos. Now, he was alone on a planet that was nothing but a barren desert, with only the harsh sun and the never-ending dust for company. For days, Alex had been trekking through the scorching heat, searching for any sign of life or water. Supplies had run out long ago, and now he was slowly dying from dehydration. His lips were cracked, his throat dry, and his body felt like it was made of stone. Each step was a struggle, but he couldn't afford to stop. He had to keep moving. If he stayed still for too long, he knew he would never get up again. He had tried to radio for help, but the communication equipment had been destroyed in the ambush. There was no one coming to save him. He was completely alone. As Alex stumbled forward, his vision blurred and the world around him began to spin. The sun was unforgiving, its heat relentless, and it felt like his body was slowly giving up. He felt lightheaded, and his legs began to buckle beneath him. He could barely keep his eyes open. But just as he thought he might fall and never rise, again, something caught his attention. A figure in the distance. A silhouette moving across the sand. At first, he thought he was imagining it. His mind was playing tricks on him from exhaustion. But as he focused, he saw that it was a woman, tall and slender, walking slowly toward him. She wore strange clothes that seemed to shimmer in the light, and her skin was a deep shade of blue, unlike anything Alex had ever seen. Her features were sharp, but there was something strangely beautiful about her. She didn't look like one of the enemy. She didn't look like a soldier. Alex's heart skipped a beat. Maybe she was a local. Maybe she could help him. His hope flared for the first time in days, but as the woman drew closer, Alex realized something. This wasn't just a local. She wasn't just a survivor either. She was an alien, and she was staring at him, her expression unreadable. He tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. He coughed instead, and his body shook with the effort. The woman didn't move. She just watched him with those strange eyes. "Water," Alex croaked, his voice barely a whisper. "Please, ... water." The woman's expression softened, but she said nothing. Instead, she stepped forward, and Alex felt a sharp pain shoot through his chest as his legs gave out completely. He collapsed to the ground, his vision going dark at the edges. He could hear her footsteps approaching, but it felt as if they were miles away. He had no strength left to fight it. He was done. He had given everything he had, and now he was ready to die. But then, something amazing happened. The alien woman knelt down beside him, her cool hand resting on his forehead. She touched his face gently, as if she were trying to understand him. Alex's eyes fluttered open just enough to see her. He wanted to speak, to thank her, but his body refused to cooperate. Instead, she reached into a pouch at her waist and pulled out a small vial. It was filled with a clear liquid that shimmered in the light. Without a word, she lifted his head gently and brought the vial to his lips. Alex drank it, barely able to hold the liquid in his mouth as it slid down his parched throat. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the world around him began to shift. The darkness in the corners of his vision faded, and he could feel strength slowly returning to his body. His heart began to beat a little faster, and his mind cleared. It wasn't a miracle, but it was enough. The liquid the woman had given him was more powerful than anything he had ever experienced. He could breathe again. He could think again. For the first time in days, Alex felt hope. But just as quickly as the feeling came, the exhaustion returned. He felt the weight of his body pushing him back toward unconsciousness. But before he could slip away again, the woman spoke. "Why?" Alex's voice was weak, but he managed to get the words out. "Why help me?" The woman looked at him, her eyes intense, but there was no anger in them. It's just something else, something he couldn't quite place. "I was sent to watch," she said quietly. "Not the enemy, but you are dying. And I do not let death claim. What I can save?" Her words were strange, but Alex understood. She wasn't just saving him out of kindness. She was following some code, some principle that governed her actions. Maybe it was mercy. Maybe it was something deeper. Whatever it was, Alex didn't care. He was alive again, and for now, that was enough. The woman helped him sit up, her strength surprising for someone so slender. "You were lucky," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Your people would not show the same mercy." Alex nodded slowly, his head still spinning from the mixture of exhaustion and the strange liquid. "No," he murmured, "but not all of us are the same." The woman's eyes softened for a brief moment, but she said nothing more. Instead, she helped him to his feet and steadied him as he stumbled, his body weak but still functional, as they walked together across the desert. The sun began to set, casting long shadows on the ground. Alex couldn't help but feel a strange sense of gratitude for the alien woman who had saved his life. He had no idea what her motives were, but he knew one thing: she had given him a second chance, and he wouldn't waste it. The desert was silent, save for the crunch of sand beneath their feet. Alex's legs felt stronger now thanks to the alien woman's mysterious liquid, but the exhaustion from days of dehydration was still with him. His mind was clearer, but his body remained weak. He wasn't sure how much longer he could keep going, but he knew he had to try. The alien woman, who had saved his life, walked beside him. Her movements graceful and steady despite the harsh conditions. She didn't speak much, and Alex found himself wondering about her. Who was she? Why had she come here? Most importantly, why had she helped him? He glanced over at her, trying to study her face. She looked calm, composed, and unbothered by the sun beating down on them. Her skin, a deep blue, seemed to shimmer under the light, and her eyes were an intense shade of violet. Her features were sharp, but there was something about her that made Alex feel a strange sense of peace. She didn't feel like an enemy. She didn't even feel like a stranger anymore as they walked. Alex's throat began to dry again, and his body grew weaker with each step. The liquid she had given him earlier had helped, but it wasn't enough to fully restore him. He had to find more water, or he knew he wouldn't survive. His mind wandered back to the moment when he had seen the woman for the first time. His body had been on the brink of collapse, and he had felt certain he would die on this barren planet. He had given up, but then she appeared, and for some reason, she had saved him. He felt a strange mix of gratitude and guilt. She had helped him, and now he was in her debt. But what could he do for her? She had already given him the most precious gift, a second chance at life. "Are you all right?" The woman's voice brought him out of his thoughts. Her tone was calm, but there was an underlying concern there that he hadn't expected. Alex nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure it was true. "I'll be fine," he said. "Just ... a little tired. I haven't had a full meal or drink in days." The woman stopped walking and turned to face him. Her expression softened as she examined him closely. "You need more than rest. You need something to give you strength." She reached into her pouch and pulled out another small vial, this one containing a glowing liquid that shimmered in the light. Alex's eyes widened as she held it out to him. "What is that?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Is a nutrient supplement," she explained. "It will help your body recover, but it is precious. I can only give you one more dose. After that, we must find another source of sustenance." Alex hesitated. He didn't want to take it. He knew it was her last dose, and he felt guilty about taking something that might be important to her. But he also knew that if he didn't, he might not make it much longer. The choice was clear. He took the vial, his hands shaking slightly. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He didn't know if she could truly understand how much her help meant, but he said it. Anyway, the woman nodded, her eyes meeting his. "You don't need to thank me," she said softly. "You've shown me that not all humans are the same. You have a strength inside you that I did not expect." Alex opened the vial and drank the liquid. Almost immediately, he felt warmth spread through his body, a kind of energy that he hadn't felt in days. The dizziness that had clouded his mind began to clear, and the aching in his muscles faded. It wasn't a cure, but it was enough to keep him going. For now, he handed the empty vial back to her. "What do you know so much about humans?" he asked, still curious about the woman's knowledge. "I was sent to observe," she replied. "I have studied your kind for years, watched your battles, your struggles. I know your weaknesses, but I also know your strength. It is ... different from ours." Alex looked at her with a mixture of confusion and interest. "You've studied us?" he asked. "But you're not part of the enemy, are you?" She shook her head slowly. "No, I am not part of the enemy. But my people have fought yours. We have crossed paths many times before, and they have always seen you as a threat. I was sent to learn about you, to understand why your kind is so dangerous." Alex's heart sank. He had known that there was always a bigger picture when it came to the galaxy's conflicts. But hearing it from the woman's own mouth made it feel more real. They had been enemies in the past, and yet here they were, walking together as unlikely allies. "So what now?" Alex asked. "What do we do next?" The woman paused, her gaze turning toward the horizon. "We find a way off this planet," she said, her voice steady, "and we do it together. You may not be the enemy I was sent to destroy, but I do not trust you completely. However, for now, we have a common goal, and that is enough." Alex didn't know what to say to that. He had no illusions. About their situation, she didn't trust him, and he didn't trust her completely either. But they needed each other to survive, in a way that made them more alike than either of them realized as they continued their journey. Alex couldn't help but wonder what would happen after they got off this planet. Would they go their separate ways, back to their respective sides of the war? Or would this strange bond between them lead to something more? He didn't have the answers yet, but one thing was certain. The journey ahead would be a test for both of them. A test of strength, trust, and survival. And Alex was ready for whatever came next. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows over the barren landscape. Alex and the alien woman had been walking for hours, their destination still far off. They had both grown quieter as the hours passed, their bodies and minds drained from the journey. The air was dry, and the planet's heat seemed to be relentless, even as the sun began to set. But Alex was grateful for the cooling air as the night slowly began to settle in. As they walked, Alex's thoughts wandered. He had never imagined he would end up in a situation like this. A soldier of Earth, stranded on a foreign planet, walking beside an alien woman who had been sent to observe and understand his species. A woman who had saved his life and now shared in his struggle to survive. It was a strange thought. In the past, he would have been ready to fight anyone from her species. But now, after everything that had happened, he wasn't so sure. The bond between them, formed in the heat of their shared struggle, was something Alex couldn't ignore. They weren't enemies anymore, at least not in the way he had once thought. "Do you know where we're going?" Alex finally asked, breaking the silence. The alien woman didn't look at him, but her voice was steady as she replied, "There's an old shelter nearby. My people used it when they first arrived on this planet. It's not far from here, but we have to move quickly. The planet's storms can be unpredictable. Can't afford to get caught out in the open when they arrive." Alex nodded. Didn't know what kind of storm she was talking about, but he had no choice but to trust her. She had already helped him more than he could have ever expected. He wasn't sure what her motives were, but he had to believe that. For now, they shared a common goal. The two of them continued walking in silence, their feet crunching against the rocky ground. As they moved further from the desert's edge, the landscape began to change. The dry, barren earth slowly gave way to a more rocky terrain, with jagged cliffs and narrow paths cutting through the landscape. Alex was beginning to feel the weight of their journey, the days of walking, the lack of food, and the constant thirst taking their toll. His throat was dry again, and his stomach growled with hunger, though he didn't dare complain. He had seen the way the woman had looked at him. Earlier, when he asked for help, he didn't want to seem weak or ungrateful. "You still haven't told me your name," Alex said after a while, his voice tired but curious. The woman glanced at him, her violet eyes gleaming in the low light. "My name is Lyra," she said. "Softly, and you?" "Alex," he replied, smiling faintly. "Captain Alex Carter of the United Earth Fleet." Lyra nodded, acknowledging his name, but said nothing more. They walked on in silence, the distance between them shrinking as they neared the shelter she had mentioned. It wasn't long before Alex began to notice something strange. As they walked through the narrow canyon, the temperature seemed to drop, and the wind began to pick up. The air grew heavy, and the sand that had once been so dry and still now whipped around them, stinging their skin.
Alex could feel the change
In the atmosphere, a kind of tension in the air that made him uneasy. "Storm's coming," Lyra said, her voice calm despite the sudden change in the weather. "We need to find cover." Alex's heart raced, and he quickened his pace, following Lyra as she led the way through the canyon. The wind grew stronger, and the sand began to swirl around them, making it difficult to see. The sky darkened, and Alex felt a chill run through him, despite the heat from the desert sun. It felt like the planet itself was alive, waiting to unleash something terrible. Lyra stopped suddenly and turned to face him. "This way," she said, pointing to a narrow opening in the canyon wall. "The shelter is just beyond this pass." Alex didn't hesitate. They scrambled through the opening, the wind howling behind them. They emerged into a small valley, and there, hidden among the rocks, was the shelter Lyra had spoken of. It was a simple structure, made of rough stone and metal, with a small entrance that had long since been covered in dust and debris. It didn't look like much, but to Alex, it was a haven, a place to rest, to recover, to find some semblance of safety. They hurried inside, and Lyra sealed the entrance behind them. The storm outside raged, but inside the shelter, it was quiet. The air was cool and still, and the walls seemed to protect them from the worst of the planet's fury. Alex collapsed onto the floor, exhausted beyond measure. He didn't even care that the ground was cold and uncomfortable. All he wanted was rest. Lyra sat nearby, her expression unreadable as she kept watch. Are you really going to help me?" Alex asked, his voice hoarse. "After everything?" Lyra didn't answer immediately. She seemed to be lost in thought, her eyes distant as if she were considering something far beyond the confines of the shelter. Finally, she spoke. "We are not enemies anymore, Alex," she said, her voice low but firm. "Your kind showed me something different. When you gave me your last electrolyte, I saw something in you, a strength that goes beyond your body. In your spirit, your will to survive." Alex was silent for a long moment. He didn't know what to say. He had never thought of himself as anything special, just a soldier doing his job. But hearing those words from Lyra, a woman who had once seen him as an enemy, made him feel something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. He looked at her, his eyes meeting hers. "I'm not sure what's going to happen next, but I'm glad. We're in this together." Lyra nodded, her expression softening slightly. "For now, that's enough. We survived together." The storm outside howled against the shelter, but inside, Alex felt a strange sense of peace. They were both survivors, and somehow, together, they had found a way to keep going. The storm outside raged for hours, its winds howling like the roar of a wild beast. Alex sat in the corner of the shelter, his back against the cold stone wall. He had never felt so exhausted in his life. The last few days had taken everything. From him, his strength, his energy, his sense of certainty. And yet, in this shelter, with Lyra beside him, found something he hadn't expected: a sense of calm. The howling wind outside reminded him of how fragile their situation was. They were on an unknown planet, surrounded by dangers he couldn't even begin to understand. But in the quiet of the shelter, with only the distant noise of the storm for company, Alex felt a strange peace. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he was fighting alone. Lyra sat near the entrance, her eyes fixed on the storm outside. Her posture was alert, as if she were constantly on guard, ready for any sign of danger. Despite the cold, she didn't seem to feel it. She was focused, her mind seemingly far from the shelter, as if she were lost in her thoughts. Alex studied her quietly. He had never imagined he would be in this situation, stranded on a foreign planet, relying on an alien woman for survival. But here they were. And as much as he hated to admit it, he was beginning to understand her. She wasn't just the enemy anymore. She was a person, survivor, just like him. Lyra's voice broke the silence. "You are strong," she said, her tone calm but thoughtful. "Stronger than I thought. You have endured much." Alex looked up, meeting her gaze. He didn't know what to say to that. He didn't feel strong. He felt tired, weak, and unsure. But her words made him realize something. He had made it this far. He had survived, and that in itself was an accomplishment. "Thanks," he muttered. "I'm not sure I'm as strong as you think, but I'll keep going." "We'll have to," Lyra nodded, her expression softening ever so slightly. For the first time, she looked almost ... human. Not just an alien species, but a woman with emotions, thoughts, and a sense of purpose. "The planet has its own rules," Lyra said, her voice quieter now. "It doesn't care who you are, where you come from, or what you've done. It will kill you if you're not careful." Alex frowned, unsure of what she meant. "What do you mean?" Lyra stood and walked over to the shelter's small window, her eyes scanning the horizon. "The planet is alive," she said, her voice low. "It knows when you are weak. It knows when you are desperate. And it will test you. It will push you to the limit to see if you are worthy of surviving here." Alex's curiosity grew. He had assumed the storm was just a natural phenomenon, a part of the planet's harsh environment. But Lyra spoke as if the storm and the planet itself had a mind of its own. "You think the planet is alive?" Alex asked, disbelief in his voice. Lyra didn't answer right away. She stood there for a moment, her eyes distant. "Yes, it may not be alive in the way you think, but it has a will. It changes, it shifts, and it tests those who are foolish enough to try to survive here." Alex shook his head, trying to wrap his mind around what she was saying. He had always thought of planets as just rocks in space, governed by physics and nature. But now, with Lyra's words lingering in his mind, he couldn't help but wonder. If there was more to the universe than he had ever imagined, you're saying was it watching us? Lyra turned to him, her gaze piercing. "In a way, yes. It reacts to us. It learns from us. If we are not careful, it will destroy us." Alex didn't know how to respond to that. He had been trained to face physical threats, hostile species, dangerous environments, and deadly combat. But the idea that a planet itself could be a threat was something entirely new. It made him feel small, insignificant, in a way he hadn't felt before. But as he looked at Lyra, something else began to shift in his mind. She wasn't just a survivor, someone to fight beside in order to escape. She had a deeper understanding of the planet's dangers, and that understanding could be the key to their survival. Maybe, just maybe, their only chance wasn't just fighting the planet's challenges, it was learning from them. Working together, not just to survive, but to understand. "Tell me more," Alex said, "about the planet, about how it works." Lyra gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. She sat back down near the entrance, the storm outside now raging even louder. The sounds of the wind echoed through the shelter, but inside, it was quiet. "It's a planet of contradictions," Lyra said, her voice distant as she spoke. "It offers nothing and yet takes everything. It's cruel, but it's also patient. It will wait for you to make a mistake. It will wait for you to be weak. And when that happens, it strikes." Alex leaned forward, his attention fully on her. "And what do we do? How do we survive?" Lyra's eyes met his, and for a moment, he saw something flicker in them, kind of understanding, a shared experience. "We learn," she said simply. "We adapt. The planet is not our enemy, it's just a challenge, and we will face it together." Her words resonated deeply within Alex. He had always thought of survival as a matter of strength, of power, but now he realized survival was also about understanding, about adapting, and that was something he could do. "We'll get through this," he said, his voice stronger now. Together. Lyra nodded, her expression softening ever so slightly. Yes, she agreed. Together. As the storm continued to rage outside, Alex and Lyra sat in the shelter, both thinking about what lay ahead. The planet was still a mystery to them both, but for the first time, Alex felt that he might have a chance to understand it. And with Lyra's help, he would face whatever challenges the planet had in store. They were no longer just two survivors. They were partners, allies, and maybe, just maybe, they could make it out of this alive. The storm had finally passed, but its impact lingered in the air. The winds had slowed, but the atmosphere still felt thick, charged with the energy of the planet. Alex could feel the weight of the air pressing down on him, as if the world itself were holding its breath. The planet wasn't done with them yet. Lyra was already preparing to leave the shelter. She moved with the same calm and steady grace that had become familiar to Alex. She had adapted to the planet's rhythm, learning its secrets long before he had arrived. And now, it seemed, she was ready to face whatever came next. Alex had never seen someone so in tune with the world around them. As he watched her, he realized that she wasn't just surviving on this planet, she was living with it, moving through its harsh conditions like they were part of the same cycle. For a moment, Alex envied that connection. He was still struggling to understand it, still trying to find his place in the chaos. Are you ready? Lyra's voice cut through his thoughts. Alex looked up and nodded. Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go. They stepped outside, and the world greeted them with a chilling breeze. The air had cooled considerably, but it still felt heavy. Alex could see the traces of the storm scattered across the landscape, broken branches, displaced rocks, and the faint traces of sand that had been swept across the ground. Lyra led the way, her eyes scanning the horizon. We'll need to move quickly, she said. The planet may seem calm now, but it can change at any moment. Alex followed her without question. He had learned to trust her, even though he still didn't fully understand her. She had saved his life more than once, and he knew that without her, he wouldn't have made it this far. He had come to realize that their survival depended on more than just their individual strength. It was about understanding the planet and each other. As they walked, the terrain shifted again. The rocky path they had been following gave way to a dense forest of twisted trees, their dark branches reaching out like the hands of the dead. The trees were unlike anything Alex had ever seen, their bark a strange silvery color that shimmered in the dim light. It felt like they were stepping into a different world altogether. The forest is dangerous, Lyra said, her voice low. The trees here can be as deadly as the storms. They're unpredictable. Alex looked around warily. The trees seemed to watch them, their branches moving in ways that didn't make sense. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The air was too still, too quiet. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. We need to be careful, Lyra continued, her eyes scanning the ground ahead. There are creatures here that you can't see until it's too late. Alex's heart skipped a beat. Creatures? He had been prepared for the storms, the heat, and the harsh terrain, but he hadn't expected to face dangerous wildlife. He had no idea what kind of creatures lived here, but the thought of encountering something unknown in this alien world sent a shiver down his spine. I've dealt with plenty of threats before, Alex said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. I'll be fine. Lyra didn't answer right away. She just kept walking, her pace steady and sure. It was clear she wasn't worried about the creatures in the forest. She had dealt with them before. Alex, on the other hand, was beginning to feel the weight of the unknown pressing in on him. They walked for hours through the dark. Twisted forest, the eerie silence broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant screech of an unseen creature. Alex's eyes kept darting around, searching for any sign of danger. He could feel the tension in his muscles. His senses heightened as he tried to stay alert. Suddenly, a noise broke the silence, a low growl. It's almost like a rumble from deep within the earth. Alex's heart raced, and he instinctively reached for his weapon, his fingers tightening around the handle. Lyra stopped in her tracks, her body going rigid. Stay still, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Alex froze, his eyes scanning the shadows around them. The growl came again, this time louder, closer. It sounded like something massive was moving through the trees, and Alex had no idea what it was. He swallowed hard, trying to control his breath, his body tense with anticipation. Lyra crouched down, her eyes narrowing as she studied the forest around them. Her hand moved to her side, where she kept a small weapon of her own, but she didn't pull it out yet. She was waiting, watching. The growl grew louder, and Alex could feel the ground vibrating beneath him. Whatever it was huge. He couldn't see it, but he could hear it getting closer. Then, suddenly, the creature appeared, a massive, shadowy figure emerging from the trees. It was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. Its body was covered in thick, bristling fur, and its eyes glowed with an eerie, predatory light. It had the shape of a large predator, but there was something about it that seemed wrong and natural. It's almost otherworldly. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as the creature stopped, its gaze locking onto him. It sniffed the air, its sharp claws clicking against the ground. Alex felt frozen in place, unsure of what to do. He had faced many dangerous creatures in his time, but this one was different. It wasn't just a threat. It was an unknown force, a part of the planet's dark, mysterious nature. Lyra was the first to move. She slowly stood up, her eyes still fixed on the creature. She raised her hand, and Alex saw her fingers move in a series of quick, fluid gestures. He didn't know what she was doing, but she seemed to be communicating with the creature in some way. The growling stopped. The creature's gaze softened, its posture shifting as it slowly backed away, retreating into the shadows of the forest. Alex exhaled slowly, his heart still racing. "What the hell was that?" he asked, his voice shaky. Lyra lowered her hand, her expression calm. "A guardian of the forest. It won't harm us now, but we must be careful. Not all creatures here are so easy to tame." Alex nodded, still processing what had just happened. He didn't know what to make of the encounter, but one thing was clear. This planet was full of surprises. And they had only just begun to scratch the surface. "We'll have to keep moving," Lyra said, her tone serious. "There are many dangers here, but as long as we stick together, we have a chance." Alex looked at her, his trust in her growing with every passing moment. She knew this world. She understood its dangers. And together, they just might survive whatever else it threw their way. The journey had been long, and the challenges they faced on the alien planet were far from over. Yet Alex could feel a change within himself, a shift that he hadn't expected. The alien woman, Lyra, had become more than just an ally. She was the key to understanding this strange world, and he had learned to trust her, even when everything around them seemed to be falling apart. They had survived the storm, the creature in the forest, and countless other trials, and now, as the sun began to rise over the distant hills, they found themselves at the edge of another unknown territory. The landscape had changed once again, and in front of them stood a tall, jagged mountain range. The peaks loomed high above them, their tips hidden in the clouds, as though they were reaching for the heavens. This was the final challenge, the place Lyra had spoken of, where the planet's deepest secrets lay hidden. "We're almost there," Lyra said, her voice steady. But there was something in her tone that told Alex she was feeling the weight of the journey too. "The ancient city lies beyond these mountains. Once we cross them, we will find what we need." Alex nodded, though he couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in his chest. They had been through so much together, and yet there was a part of him that wondered if this final trial would be the one to break them. But he couldn't afford to think that way not now. They had come too far. "Do you think we'll find help there?" Alex asked, his voice hoarse from the long trek. "Or will we be on our own, like always?" Lyra looked at him, her violet eyes reflecting the first light of dawn. "I don't know," she said quietly, "but we must try. The city holds knowledge that could change everything. If we're lucky, we may find a way to leave this planet alive." Alex felt a twinge of doubt, but he pushed it aside. They had no other choice but to move forward. "Then let's go," he said, his voice firm. Together, they began their ascent up the steep mountain path. The climb was difficult, the rocks loose beneath their feet, but Alex found strength in the rhythm of their movements. Every step brought them closer to their goal, and though the path seemed endless, he knew that they couldn't stop now. Not after everything they had been through. The day passed slowly, the sun rising higher in the sky. They stopped for short breaks, taking what little water they had left, and continued to push on. Lyra seemed tireless, her pace steady and sure. Alex, on the other hand, was beginning to feel the strain. His muscles ached, and the lack of food and water was starting to take its toll. But he refused to let it slow him down. He had made it this far, and he wasn't about to stop now, as the sun began to set. Casting a golden glow across the mountains, they finally reached the top. From there, they could see the vast expanse of the ancient city below. It was a breathtaking sight, towering stone structures, crumbled walls, and ruins that stretched out as far as the eye could see. The city looked ancient, forgotten by time. But there was something about it that felt alive, as though the land itself held the memory of all that had once been. "This is it," Lyra said, her voice filled with awe. "The city of my ancestors." Alex looked down at the city, his heart pounding in his chest. He had expected a fortress, a place of war and defense, but what lay before them was different. It was quiet, peaceful in its solitude. The silence of the city seemed to echo through the mountains, reminding them of the world's forgotten past. Lyra took a deep breath, as if gathering her strength, and then began the descent down into the city. Alex followed closely behind, his feet slipping on the loose rocks. They moved cautiously, aware that the city might still hold dangers of its own. As they entered the city, the air changed. It was cooler here, the wind soft and gentle against their skin. The structures were made of a strange, dark stone that seemed to shimmer in the fading light, as though the city itself were alive, breathing in time with the planet. "Where do we go from here?" Alex asked, his voice low. Lyra stopped in front of a large, broken archway. She touched the stone gently, her fingers tracing the ancient markings carved into its surface. "This is where my people once gathered," she said quietly. "The knowledge we seek is buried here. It's been waiting for someone to find it." Alex nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had never understood the full depth of what Lyra's people had endured on this planet. But now, standing in this ancient city, he could feel the power of their history. The land, the stones, and the ruins, they all held the echoes of a past long gone. It was clear that Lyra's ancestors had once thrived here, but now only remnants remained. Lyra stepped forward, leading Alex deeper into the city. They passed through narrow streets lined with towering stone buildings, their walls covered in moss and vines. The silence was overwhelming, broken only by the sound of their footsteps on the stone. Finally, they reached a large chamber at the heart of the city. The room was vast, its ceiling stretching high above them, supported by tall columns that seemed to reach toward the sky. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and on it a glowing orb rested. Lyra approached the pedestal, her hand outstretched. "This is it," she said, her voice filled with reverence. "The knowledge of my people, the key to understanding this planet." Alex watched as she reached out to touch the orb. The moment her fingers made contact with it, the room seemed to come alive. The walls began to glow with soft light, and the air hummed with energy. It was as though the entire city was reacting to her touch. Awakening after centuries of sleep, Lyra turned to Alex, her eyes filled with awe. "We've done it," she said softly. "We've found the answers we've been searching for." Alex stood there, his heart racing. He had no idea what would happen next, but he knew that this moment marked the beginning of something new. The planet had tested them, pushed them to their limits, but they had survived. And now, they had unlocked the secrets of the world that had once seemed so hostile. They were no longer just survivors, they were explorers. This was only the beginning. As the orb continued to glow, Alex couldn't help but wonder what the future would hold for them. They had come to this planet as strangers, enemies, but now they had found something far greater, and they had found a chance for a new beginning.